Hey guys, welcome back to the Gears and Tool channel, and today we are reviewing the SwissTool X and the very capable SwissTool Spirit X. Which one's better? Well, let's dive in and find out. Okay, so before we start with this review, I just want to say a couple quick things. These are both SwissTools, so I'm not going to be saying SwissTool every 2 seconds. Moving forward, this is going to be the SwissTool X, and this will be known as just the Spirit X, so we can differentiate the two. Secondly, these are both very highly polished tools, so I'm going to be leaving fingerprints all over these things as I handle them. It is what it is, so if you guys don't like tools that have fingerprints all over them, neither of these tools are going to be a great fit for you. So let's go ahead and dive into the basic differences between these two tools and what the pros and cons of each are. For the size and weight, let's start with the SwissTool X, which is a little bit bigger, has an overall length of 4.58 inches, a width of 1.37 inches, and a thickness of 0.61 inches. So a pretty good sized multi-tool, not as big as something like the Leatherman Charge, but definitely on the larger end of the medium duty multi-tool spectrum, probably getting closer to a heavier duty multi-tool. And then the weight on this is 9.82 ounces, which is pretty good. It's under the 10 ounce mark, which keeps it in the medium duty multi-tool category in my mind. It's definitely on the bigger side compared to the Spirit X. So let's go ahead and take a look at the side of the Spirit X. And right off the bat, we can see this tool is visibly smaller. It's 4.17 inches long, 1.37 inches wide, and 0.57 inches thick. So a little bit smaller in all dimensions except for the width, because the handles are a little bit curved. This ends up being the same width as the SwissTool X. Side by side, you can definitely tell that the SwissTool X is a little bit longer than the Spirit X. However, they're about the same thickness and the overall width is very comparable. So if it's going to be a little bit bigger in any dimension, the length is definitely the preferred dimension, making it a little bit easier to carry the extra bulk. While these tools don't come with pocket clips, they both come with sheaths. The Spirit X I purchased comes with a leather sheath with a Velcro attachment, which if you guys have watched my channel for a while, you know I like the snap button attachment better. The Spirit X is also available with a nylon sheath, but I got the leather sheath version. Now for the SwissTool X, I got the nylon sheath with it, and it has a snap button, which I actually like quite a bit. So both these tools come with either a leather or nylon sheath, and this depends which one you buy. So if you want a leather one, this is what you're going to be getting. And if you want a nylon sheath, this is what you're going to be provided with. Both sheaths have a belt loop on the back that allow for vertical carry, but there are not belt loops for horizontal carry. Okay, so that's your size and weight and carrying methods. Let's go ahead and take a look at the tools themselves. Let's go ahead and take a look at the tools that are accessible on the outside of each. Now through this review, I'm going to try and keep the Spirit X on the right so it's easy to identify which tool is which. Now the knife blade is in the same position on both of these tools, but they are slightly different. The Spirit X has a 2.26 inch blade, while the SwissTool X has a 2.52 inch blade. So about 1/4 inch longer. And also the blade shape is a little bit different. On the Spirit X, because of the curved handles, the blade is also curved. It kind of slopes upward, where the SwissTool X has a more straight pin style blade. I personally prefer the straight blade better. I think it's better for draw cuts, and it just looks a little bit more visually appealing in my opinion. Both blades are very functional, and I do like that they're both fully straight edges versus a combo blade with a partly serrated edge. That being said, these are the only knife blades that come on these multi-tools. It would have been nice to have a secondary fully serrated blade. Both tools have a similar locking mechanism with a slide bar that you can simply pull back to unlock the knife. To save you a little time, I went ahead and pulled out all the other features on the knife blade side of the multi-tool. So on the SwissTool X, we have a large flathead screwdriver. We have a chisel tip with kind of wire strippers. We have a medium screwdriver tip with a bottle opener or cap lifter, and a wire bender, which I think is a little bit silly because you have a pair of pliers on here. Wouldn't you just use that for bending wire? But anyways, it's there. The can opener with a small screwdriver tip, and then finally the wood saw. So very capable tool set on the SwissTool X. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Spirit X. So on the Spirit X, we do have a little bit different configuration. We have, again, the chisel tip slash kind of box cutter opener. We have the wire strippers, which is similar to the second tool on the SwissTool X. And then we have the cap lifter with a medium screwdriver head and wire bender. We have an awl, which is not on the side of the handle of the SwissTool X. And then finally we have a saw. And the saws are very similar in length. I'd say the SwissTool X saw is slightly longer, but both are definitely going to get the job done. So that's kind of the left-hand side of the handle. Let's go ahead and close these up. and look at the tools on the other side. Okay guys, so I went ahead and pulled out all the tools on both the SwissTool X and the Spirit X. I did this to try to save a little bit of time since there's kind of a lot to go through. And I know I'm going a little bit quick through some of these tools. If you guys want a little bit more information on the details of each tool and what I think are the strengths and weaknesses of them, I'll put some links in the upper right hand corner of this video and the video description below. So you can go look at my in-depth review of the SwissTool X and the Spirit X. This video is really meant to be a comparison video between these two so you can see the differences of them. So on the SwissTool X, we have a very large pair of scissors, which I like very much. I definitely think they're one of the best pairs of scissors in any multi-tool. We have an awl. We have a nice number 1, number 2 Phillips head screwdriver with a nice long shank. I really like the screwdriver they put on these SwissTools. A small flathead screwdriver. And finally, a file, which is okay. I'm a little bit underwhelmed with the file that SwissTool puts on. I'd say they're average. They're definitely better than some files you find on other multi-tools, but I really, really wish they'd put the diamond coating on at least one side of them. For the Spirit X, again, we have a pair of scissors. However, the scissors are smaller. They don't open as much, and they kind of operate on a tension bar, which is very reliable, but doesn't allow them to open up and cut very thick material. We have a small flathead screwdriver. We have a number 1, number 2 Phillips head screwdriver, which is basically the same one that you find on the SwissTool X. Very functional. Again, I really like the long shank that they put on those. A can opener with a small flathead screwdriver on the tip. And again, a file, which is very similar to the SwissTool X file. It's going to be a little bit smaller. The biggest thing I'm going to point out between these two files is this file is definitely narrower or skinnier than the SwissTool X file, giving the SwissTool X the advantage. Starting off with the SwissTool X, it opens up pretty easily. And it has a relatively large pair of pliers, and let's see how that compares to the Spirit X pliers. Again, opens up smoothly. Neither pliers are spring-loaded, and they have a very similar plier head design. But before we take a close look at the plier heads, let's take a look at the handles. So one of the differences is SwissTool Spirit X has kind of an arced or curved handle to it, which means it comes to a closer pinch at the back of the pair of pliers, making it a little bit more suited for smaller hands. Now the SwissTool X, on the other hand, has a straighter handle design, making it feel a little bit more full in the hand, but may not be as suited for people with smaller hands. One positive thing I want to point out is neither tool has a tendency to want to bite the meat of your hand. I know some Leatherman products, when you're really prying on something and you slip off, they'll want to bite the meat of your hand in between the handles. Neither of these tools really want to do that. I mean, in a worst case scenario, it's possible, but it's not as prevalent of an issue as it is on the Leatherman Wave or Charge series products. Looking at the plier head side by side, we can definitely tell that the SwissTool X has a little bit larger pair of pliers, but the design is very similar. Both tools have the needle nose plier heads that are slightly blunted with nice rounded tips on them, which work really good for getting in tight areas. The machining on the plier grips themselves are quite sharp and nice and aggressive. And the wire cutters are not removable on either tool, and they have a notch in there for hard wire cutting. I personally don't like this feature that much. I kind of wish it was just an entirely straight and plain wire cutter. So for the pliers, I'm going to give the win to the SwissTool X just because the pliers are basically the same design, and the SwissTool X has a little bit larger pliers with larger handles. Alright, so that's enough yammering. What's my final takeaway? Well, both these tools are made extremely well, and they basically have the same features. So it comes down to preference. The SwissTool X is a little bit bigger and is more suited for people with bigger hands, and the Spirit X is a little bit smaller and has a more ergonomic handle that suits people with smaller hands. The SwissTool X is a little bit heavier, however, it doesn't come in a package that's significantly bigger. So size isn't a huge consideration. It really comes down to weight. If weight's important, you're going to want to go with the Spirit X. However, if weight isn't important, you're probably going to want to go with the SwissTool X because the length gives you longer handles when using the pliers. Alright guys, I hope that comparison review helps you make a buying decision. These tools are surprisingly similar when you put them next to each other, and it really comes down to preference between a little bit longer design or something that's a little bit more ergonomic. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button below. It helps the channel out a lot. And don't forget to hit that subscribe and bell icon so you're first to be notified when I release new videos. Cheers!